In the shadow of the towering magnolias, the Barrow estate stood as a testament to both wealth and cruelty. While many landowners prided themselves on their benevolence, Jasper Barrow earned a reputation for his unforgiving demeanor. He ruled his land with an iron fist, implementing a brutal regime that offered no respite to those who toiled in his fields. The enslaved workers, caught in a relentless cycle of labor, lived under the constant threat of Barrow's wrath, acutely aware that a single misstep could invite dire consequences. The Barrow estate was not merely a plantation. It was a crucible of human suffering and a reflection of the societal discord that permeated the antebellum South. As the summer of 1852 approached, an electric tension filled the air at Barrow's Hollow. In hushed tones, the enslaved community exchanged stories of hope and escape, inspired by tales of freedom seekers who had made perilous journeys north. Each whispered word fanned the flames of defiance, igniting dreams of liberation amidst the oppressive heat. The atmosphere grew charged, thick with the anticipation of change, leading to a night that would forever alter the course of their lives. On July 20th, an event unfolded that would send shockwaves through the estate and the surrounding town, revealing the fragile veneer of order that Barrow had so carefully constructed. As news of the incident spread, it forced a reckoning among the plantation owners and the townsfolk, compelling them to face the profound moral dilemmas of their era. The saga of Barrow's Hollow not only tells of a night fraught with peril, but also unearths the enduring struggle for freedom and the inherent dignity of those who were unjustly subjugated. As the sun rose over the Barrow estate on that fateful July morning, a heavy mist cloaked the land, shrouding the plantation in an eerie silence. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the very earth sensed the unrest brewing among its inhabitants. Jasper Barrow, oblivious to the shifting winds of change, strode purposefully from his grand mansion, his boots crunching on the gravel path, confident in the power he wielded. Meanwhile, within the confines of the cotton fields, the enslaved workers exchanged furtive glances and whispered murmurs, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. Among them was Eliza, a young woman with fierce determination etched across her features. Her mother had once told her stories of the Underground Railroad, tales that ignited a flicker of courage within her soul. Eliza had been preparing for the upcoming summer months not merely as a time for toil, but as an opportunity to ignite the spark of rebellion that had begun to flicker in the hearts of her fellow workers. On the evening of July 19th, Eliza gathered a small group of trusted friends in the shadow of the great oak tree that stood sentinel at the edge of the fields. They spoke in hushed tones, aware that even the slightest sound could betray them. "We can't keep living like this," she implored, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear within. "We've heard stories of others making it to freedom. If they can do it, so can we. But we must act together." The plan was simple, yet fraught with danger. They would escape under the cover of darkness, following the North Star as their guide. As the group dispersed with a sense of urgency, they knew the risks all too well. Failure meant not only the loss of their own freedom but also dire consequences for their families left behind. That night, as the moon rose high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the fields, Eliza and her companions crept away from their quarters, hearts racing. They moved quietly, shadows among shadows, toward the edge of the estate. Just as they reached the tree line, a sudden rustle broke the stillness. Fear gripped them, but they pressed on, evading the watchful eyes of the patrolling overseers. Back at the mansion, Jasper Barrow was unaware of the storm brewing just beyond his sight. He sat with his friends, their laughter echoing in the opulent parlor as they toasted to the summer harvest. The clinking of glasses masked the distant sounds of freedom stirring within the fields, the very essence of defiance against his oppressive reign. But the night was not destined to pass unchallenged. As Eliza and her companions made their way deeper into the woods, the sharp snap of a twig echoed through the stillness, causing them to freeze. From the shadows emerged Nathaniel, a fellow worker known for his quick wit and even quicker feet. "What are you doing out here?" he hissed, glancing around as if the trees themselves might betray them. Eliza's heart sank momentarily, but then lifted again. "We're leaving. We're going to find freedom," she declared, her resolve unshaken. "Will you join us?" Nathaniel's eyes flickered with the weight of the decision, the fear of repercussions battling against the allure of liberation. "You know if they catch you," he began, but Eliza interrupted. "If we don't try, we'll never know what's out there." With a deep breath, Nathaniel nodded, the fire of resistance igniting within him. "I'm in," he said, his voice firm. They formed a new bond in that moment, one forged not just in desperation, but in a shared dream of freedom that transcended the shackles of their current existence. As dawn broke across the horizon, the silhouettes of the group faded into the embrace of the wilderness, leaving behind the shadows of the Barrow estate. Each step forward was a step toward hope, toward a future unwritten. But they knew that the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and the gravity of their choice weighed heavily on their shoulders. The tension that had built over the months was about to erupt, and in the heart of the enslaved community, the whispers of rebellion had transformed into a resounding call for liberation. As night draped its velvety cloak over the Barrow estate, Eliza felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, eyes filled with longing, fear, and a flicker of hope. The ancient magnolias, with their gnarled branches, seemed to whisper secrets of freedom, their leaves rustling softly in the warm summer breeze. She could hear the distant sounds of the plantation, the creaking of the slave quarters, the soft murmur of the river, each sound a reminder of what she was leaving behind and what lay ahead. Gathering her courage, Eliza motioned for Nathaniel to join her. His sharp wit had always provided a comforting balm amid their struggles, and tonight was no different. "You sure about this?" he whispered, his brow furrowed with concern, yet his eyes sparkling with mischief. "One wrong step, and old Jasper will have our heads on a platter." Eliza nodded, her resolve hardening. "We can't let fear bind us like chains. We owe it to ourselves, and to those who came before us, to try." She glanced at the silhouettes of her fellow escapees, their faces illuminated by the silvery glow of the moon. Each one carried their own burden, their own dreams of freedom. As they crept through the thick underbrush, the oppressive atmosphere of the plantation began to fade, replaced by the sweet scent of blooming jasmine and the promise of a new life. They moved cautiously, hearts pounding in unison, knowing that each sound could betray them. The estate loomed behind them, a dark memory soon to be eclipsed by the light of their aspirations. Suddenly, a rustling in the bushes caught their attention. Eliza's heart raced, but Nathaniel's quick thinking prevented panic from taking hold. "It's just a rabbit," he whispered, though the tremor in his voice revealed his own uncertainty. They shared a fleeting smile, a momentary diversion from the perilous journey ahead. As they reached the edge of the plantation, the path stretched out before them, leading into the dense woods that bordered the estate. It was said that beyond these trees lay the Underground Railroad, a network of safe houses and allies, a beacon in their dark plight. Yet the journey would not be easy. The path was fraught with dangers, and the fear of being hunted lingered like a shadow. Eliza felt a surge of determination. "We need to split up," she suggested. "Cover more ground, less chance of being caught." The group murmured in agreement, knowing this was a gamble, but one they were willing to take. They each agreed on a rendezvous point just beyond the creek at dawn. As they shared a final embrace, Eliza could feel the energy of her fellow escapees pulsing through her, their hopes and fears intertwined. With a final glance back at the Barrow estate, Eliza took a deep breath, steeling herself for the unknown. The scent of freedom hung in the air like a tantalizing promise, urging her forward. She stepped into the shadows, flanked by Nathaniel, their resolve unyielding. Each step was a defiance against Jasper Barrow's tyranny, a testament to their unbreakable spirit. Minutes turned into an eternity as they traversed the underbrush, the chill of the night air mingling with the warmth of their dreams. But nature held her secrets well. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the familiar sounds of the plantation slowly faded, overtaken by the symphony of nocturnal creatures. Just as Eliza began to feel a glimmer of hope, a voice pierced the stillness. "Who goes there?" It was a cold, commanding tone, echoing through the trees like the crack of a whip. The group froze, hearts pounding like war drums, knowing that the time for hope had shifted into a moment of peril. Emerging from the shadows was Thomas, Jasper Barrow's overseer, a man whose loyalty to his master was matched only by his cruelty. He held a lantern aloft, casting an ominous glow on their faces. "You think you can run," he sneered, stepping closer, the beam of light revealing the defiance in Eliza's eyes. In that instant, everything hung in the balance. Would they succumb to fear, or would they rise, like the very spirits of the ancestors who had fought before them? Eliza grasped Nathaniel's hand, feeling the strength of their resolve surge between them. With a deep breath, she faced the overseer, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We're not running. We're fighting for our lives." And with that declaration, the night unfolded into a battle for freedom, a testament to their courage and the fierce desire to reclaim what had been stolen from them. The night air was thick with tension as Eliza's heart raced in time with the pulse of the forest around them. The tall trees loomed like sentinels, their shadows dancing in the dim light of the crescent moon. She could hear the soft rustling of leaves, and every snap of a twig felt magnified as they moved stealthily through the underbrush. "Stick to the plan," Nathaniel whispered, his voice barely above a breath. They had agreed to meet near the old creek, an abandoned spot known only to a few. Eliza nodded, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Freedom was close, yet danger lurked at every turn. As they crept forward, the sounds of the plantation faded into the distance, replaced by the chorus of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. But just as they began to feel a glimmer of hope, the brush parted, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Samuel, an older man who had worked alongside Eliza and Nathaniel for years. He was bent but resilient, his face etched with lines that told stories of hardship and survival. "Are you mad?" Samuel hissed, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "You can't be here. Thomas is hunting for you." Eliza stepped closer, her determination unwavering. "We're not turning back, Samuel. We're going to be free." Samuel hesitated, fear battling against the fire of hope igniting in his chest. "You'll need more than courage to face him. Thomas has dogs, fierce ones. They'll track your scent." At that moment, the howls of hounds echoed through the trees, chilling their bones. Eliza's breath hitched, but she shook her head, refusing to let fear take hold. "We must move now. If we can reach the creek before dawn, we'll have a chance." With a reluctant nod, Samuel joined them. They pressed onward, pushing through thick underbrush. Their senses heightened as the hounds' howls grew louder, closer. The scent of damp earth mingled with the adrenaline surging through their veins, propelling them forward. Suddenly, a bright light pierced through the trees, illuminating the path ahead. Nathaniel's eyes widened. "They've sent search parties," he warned. "We need to split up." Eliza's heart sank at the thought of fracturing their fledgling group, but desperation clawed at her. "We'll meet at the creek. No matter what happens, stay low and stay quiet. We can't let them catch us." With one last glance, the group scattered into the underbrush, each step carrying them deeper into the unknown. Eliza could hear the pounding of her own heart as she dashed through the shadows, her mind focused on the North Star shining high above, a beacon guiding her toward freedom. As she navigated through the dense foliage, she stumbled upon a clearing. In its center stood the ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches reaching into the sky like arms yearning for liberation. It was a hauntingly beautiful sight, yet its presence stirred a mix of hope and foreboding within her. Suddenly, a sharp bark broke through the stillness, sending a jolt of fear through Eliza's spine. The hounds were near. She turned to flee when she caught sight of a figure moving stealthily through the trees. Thomas, his silhouette menacing against the moonlight. "Is that you, Eliza?" he called out, his voice dripping with malice. "You think you can escape? You'll regret this." With her heart pounding, Eliza ducked behind the oak, her breath shallow. She could hear him ordering the dogs, their eager barks growing louder, the sound echoing through the night like a hunting horn. In that moment, a fierce resolve washed over her. She was not just running, she was fighting back. Eliza reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against the makeshift dagger she had crafted from a piece of metal. It was a simple tool, but it represented her defiance, her refusal to be just another victim. "Not tonight," she whispered to herself, clutching the dagger tightly as she prepared to confront the darkness closing in. The battle for freedom was just beginning. Eliza crouched low beneath the thick brambles, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. The night air was thick with the damp scent of earth, mingling with the sweet fragrance of jasmine that seemed to taunt her with its beauty. She could hear the distant howling of the hunting dogs, their keen noses searching for the faintest trace of their quarry. Fear and adrenaline coursed through her veins, but she forced herself to breathe deeply, reminding herself of the promise of freedom that lay just beyond the tree line. Nathaniel, ever the optimist, whispered from the shadows beside her, "We need to keep moving, Eliza. Dawn is only a few hours away, and we can't risk being caught." His eyes sparkled with mischief even in the bleakness of their predicament, a spark of hope she desperately needed. Just then, a rustling sound broke the silence. Eliza's heart skittered as they turned their heads in unison, peering into the darkness. Samuel emerged from the shadows, his face gaunt but resolute. "We have to stick together," he urged, his voice steady despite the danger. "I saw Thomas on my way here. He's hunting us like animals, and he won't stop until he finds every last one of us." Eliza nodded, gripping her makeshift dagger tighter. "Then we use that to our advantage. If we can draw him away from the creek, we might have a chance." The plan was risky, but the thought of freedom was a blazing fire in her mind, urging her forward. Suddenly, a chilling howl echoed through the night, causing the hairs on the back of Eliza's neck to prickle. The dogs were closer now, their growls low and menacing. "This way," Nathaniel hissed, leading them down a narrow path that twisted deeper into the woods. They moved quickly, weaving between trees and underbrush, the shadows enveloping them like a cloak of safety. As they reached a small clearing, Samuel paused, his breath heavy. "We need a distraction," he said, scanning the area for anything that could help them. Eliza's eyes fell on an old abandoned shack, partially hidden by the foliage. "Inside," she urged, and they slipped into the darkened space, the air thick and musty. Inside, they huddled together, listening intently as the sounds of the plantation faded into the distance. "If we're lucky, Thomas will think we've gone the other way," Nathaniel whispered, his voice barely above a breath. But luck was a fickle friend. Just moments later, a bright beam of lantern light sliced through the darkness, illuminating the shack's entrance. Thomas stood there, flanked by two burly men, his eyes gleaming with malice. "I know you're in there," he barked, his voice a whip crack in the stillness. "There's nowhere to run. You're all coming back with me, one way or another." Eliza's heart raced, but instead of fear, a fierce determination surged within her. "We have a plan, and we're not going back," she shouted, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her. The others looked to her, their eyes filled with a mix of admiration and dread. In that moment, she realized that their escape wasn't just about her own freedom. It was about all of them, about reclaiming their lives, their dignity, and their right to choose their own destinies. "On my count," she whispered, glancing at Nathaniel and Samuel, who nodded in silent understanding. 3, 2, 1, now." In a flash, they burst out of the shack, running in different directions. Eliza felt the adrenaline surge as she zigzagged through the trees, the sound of barking dogs echoing behind her, but she could not allow herself to look back. Freedom awaited, and she would fight tooth and nail to seize it. As the first light of dawn crested the horizon, Eliza spotted the creek ahead, its waters shimmering like liquid hope. She could hear the distant calls of her companions, urging her on. Every step was a declaration of her resolve, a promise that she would not be shackled any longer. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but she knew the fight was far from over. Freedom was just beyond the water, and with each heartbeat she surged closer to her destiny. Eliza's heart raced as she sprinted towards the creek, the moonlight glinting off the water's surface, illuminating the path ahead. The sounds of barking hounds echoed behind her, a relentless reminder of the danger that pursued them. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her, but with each step she felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. "Over here." Nathaniel's voice broke through the chaos, pulling her from her thoughts. He had found a narrow path that snaked alongside the creek, concealed by thick underbrush. Samuel was already there, his breath coming in sharp gasps as he motioned for them to hurry. "We need to keep moving," he urged, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of their pursuers. As they ducked into the shadows, Eliza's mind raced. "If we can reach the old mill by dawn, we might have a chance to hide," she proposed, glancing back at the shadows shifting behind them. "It's abandoned, and the thick walls should keep us safe until the sun rises." Nathaniel nodded, determination etched on his face. "Let's go. We can't let Thomas catch us. Not now." The trio moved swiftly along the bank, the sound of the creek mingling with the distant howls of the hounds. The water rushed beside them, a constant reminder of the freedom that lay just beyond their reach. But soon, the rhythmic pounding of their hearts was drowned out by the thunderous barks growing closer. Suddenly, Samuel halted, raising a hand. "There's a bridge up ahead. We'll cross it and take cover in the mill. It's our best option." Eliza's pulse quickened. The plan felt both hopeful and perilous. "What if Thomas is waiting for us on the other side?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "Then we'll have to be quicker and quieter," Samuel replied, his resolve unwavering. "We've come too far to turn back now." They approached the rickety bridge, its wooden planks creaking ominously underfoot. As they crossed, the moonlight cast eerie shadows that danced around them. Eliza's thoughts began to swirl, conjuring images of freedom intertwined with memories of the plantation. The cruel laughter of overseers, the cries of those who had lost their chance at escape. As they reached the other side, a sudden rustle in the bushes sent a jolt through Eliza. "Stay close," she hissed, her heart pounding. But before they could regroup, a figure emerged, a young woman with wild, tangled hair and eyes filled with fierce determination. "Are you escaping?" she asked breathlessly, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "I can help you." Eliza exchanged a quick look with Nathaniel and Samuel. "Who are you?" Eliza demanded, but her voice trembled with both suspicion and hope. "I'm Lila," the woman replied urgently, her gaze darting to the path they had just traveled. "I know these woods better than anyone. Thomas won't be far behind. If you trust me, I can show you a hidden route to the mill." Eliza hesitated, weighing their options. There was safety in numbers, but trust was a luxury in their perilous situation. Yet the urgency in Lila's voice resonated with her, igniting a newfound spark of determination. "All right, lead the way," Eliza finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But if you're leading us into a trap—" "I swear on my life I'm not," Lila interrupted, her expression earnest. "I want to be free too." Without another word, Lila dashed into the woods, her figure melding into the darkness. Eliza, Nathaniel, and Samuel followed closely, adrenaline surging through their veins as they plunged deeper into the heart of the forest, leaving behind the haunting echoes of the plantation and stepping into the unknown. With each stride, Eliza felt the weight of her past begin to lighten, but a sense of impending danger loomed overhead, reminding her that the fight for freedom was far from over. They were not just fleeing, they were forging a path towards hope, and the first light of dawn would soon test their resolve. As the moonlight flickered through the thick canopy overhead, Eliza felt a mix of trepidation and hope. Lila moved with an uncanny grace, her silhouette almost blending into the shadows. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "The creek isn't far, but we must be silent." Eliza nodded, casting a glance back at Nathaniel and Samuel, who were huddled close behind her. Each step felt heavier as the weight of their uncertainty pressed down on them. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint rustle of leaves, but the sounds of the hunting dogs echoed in the distance, a constant reminder of Thomas's relentless pursuit. "Do you trust her?" Nathaniel murmured, his eyes darting around for any sign of danger. "She could be leading us into a trap." Eliza paused, biting her lip. "I don't know. But we don't have many options. Either we follow her and hope for the best, or we risk running into Thomas again. We need to move." They pressed on, the underbrush scratching at their legs as they navigated deeper into the forest. Lila guided them to a narrow path that twisted like a serpent through the trees. "This way," she urged, her dark hair cascading down her back like a waterfall of ink. "We're almost there." Eliza's heart raced. She could imagine the glint of Thomas's eyes as he hunted them, that predatory gaze fueled by a cruel determination. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from somewhere behind them, followed by the frantic barking of the hounds. "Run!" Samuel shouted, his voice breaking the heavy silence as he surged forward, drawing the group into a sprint. The shadows danced around them, branches clawing at their clothes as they darted through the maze of trees. As they ran, Lila suddenly halted, her expression turning grave. "Down there," she pointed to a steep incline leading to the creek below, shrouded in darkness. "If we can reach the water, we might lose them." With no time to waste, they scrambled down the incline, hearts pounding as they dodged the jagged rocks and roots that threatened to trip them. Eliza felt the cool rush of water beneath her feet as they reached the creek, the sound of rushing water drowning out the noise of the dogs. "Quick, hide," Lila urged, leading them to a thicket of bushes close to the bank. They crouched low, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they listened. The barking grew louder, echoing through the trees as Thomas's voice cut through the night, sharp and commanding. "They can't have gone far. Keep searching." Eliza's heart sank. They were so close, yet the threat loomed larger than ever. As they huddled in the bushes, Samuel whispered, "What's the plan?" "We can't stay here forever." Lila's brow furrowed. "If we can manage to divert the dogs, I know a way to the mill that cuts through the underbrush, but it'll require some noise to draw them away." Eliza exchanged glances with her companions, weighing the risks. "What do you need us to do?" Lila took a deep breath, her determination evident. "I'll need someone to create a distraction by moving upstream. The rest of you should be ready to move quickly to the mill when the coast is clear." "I'll do it," Nathaniel volunteered without hesitation. "I can make enough noise to lead them away." "No," Eliza grabbed his arm, panic rising. "It's too dangerous, Nathaniel. We can't risk losing you." He met her gaze, his blue eyes resolute. "We all want freedom, Eliza. This is my chance to help you. I won't let fear hold me back." Samuel nodded, his voice steady. "We'll follow you, Nathaniel. Just be careful." With a final, determined look at them, Nathaniel slipped away from the thicket, moving upstream as silently as he could. Eliza watched him disappear into the shadows, her heart pounding with a mix of admiration and dread. "Now, we wait," Lila whispered, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The sound of the rushing creek surrounded them, a stark contrast to the chaos that lay just beyond their hiding place. As the moments ticked by, Eliza felt a surge of hope. They were still alive, still fighting. They had each other, and together they would find a way to outsmart Thomas and his hounds. The thought ignited a fire within her, a reminder of everything worth fighting for: freedom, family, and the promise of a new beginning. As the sun dipped lower behind the jagged silhouettes of the trees, casting long shadows over the damp earth, Eliza felt a shiver of both fear and anticipation. The air was thick with tension. She could hear the distant baying of the hounds echoing through the forest, a haunting reminder that time was not on their side. "Lila, how far is it to the mill?" Nathaniel asked, his voice low but urgent. He scanned the tree line, muscles coiled like a spring, ready to act at a moment's notice. "Not far, if we take the path I know," Lila replied, her wild hair framing her face like a halo of chaos. "But the creek has grown treacherous since the rains. We'll need to move quickly and quietly." Samuel, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "We can't risk getting trapped in a dead end. If Thomas knows we're heading there, he'll be waiting for us. We need an alternative route." Eliza exchanged a glance with Nathaniel, their shared determination tightening the bond between them. "If we split up, we might confuse him," she suggested, her mind racing. "Lila, can you take Samuel and circle around to the north? Nathaniel and I can head straight for the mill." "No," Nathaniel interjected firmly. "We stay together. We'll only increase our chances of getting caught if we split up. Lila, can you guide us through the brush, away from the creek?" Lila nodded, a glint of mischief sparking in her eyes. "It's risky, but I know a shortcut through the thicket." "We'll need to move as one, though. Stick close to me." With the decision made, they fell into a hurried formation, Lila leading the way. The path was narrow, overgrown with brambles and vines that clawed at their clothes like the desperate hands of the past. Every step felt weighted with urgency, the sounds of the hounds growing louder, drawing ever closer. Suddenly, a loud snap echoed through the underbrush, followed by a frantic rustle. Eliza's heart raced as she turned to see a massive doe leaping through the trees, startled by their presence. It dashed away in a flurry of hooves, and for a brief moment the barking of the dogs lessened, distracted by the new scent. "Keep moving," Lila urged, her voice a fierce whisper as she pressed forward, her instincts guiding them through the darkening woods. Eliza caught Nathaniel's eye, and they exchanged a silent vow. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. As they maneuvered through a thicket of thorny bushes, Samuel stumbled, catching his foot on a twisted root. He fell heavily to the ground, the sound echoing like a warning bell in the night. "Go, I can catch up," he urged, panic flickering in his eyes. "No," Eliza cried, her heart pounding with the thought of losing him. With a swift decision, she and Nathaniel reached down to help him to his feet, the weight of their collective resolve anchoring them. With every passing moment, the hound's cries grew more distinct, a chilling symphony of pursuit. They pressed forward, Lila leading them around a sharp bend in the path, where the trees parted to reveal a small clearing. At the far side stood the old mill, a crumbling structure draped in ivy, its windows dark and foreboding. "There," Lila pointed toward the mill, urgency flooding her voice. "We can barricade ourselves inside. It's not perfect, but it's a chance." Just as they rushed toward the entrance, the sound of barking erupted again, closer this time. accompanied by the thundering of paws against the earth. With no time to lose, they dashed inside the mill, the heavy door slamming shut behind them. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of damp wood and decay. Dust motes danced in the fading light as they huddled together, breathless and wide-eyed. "We need to find a way to fortify this door," Nathaniel whispered urgently, scanning the interior for anything they could use. Eliza's heart raced as she caught a glimpse of the old machinery, rusted gears and broken belts strewn about. Inspiration struck. "Over there," she pointed. "If we can push that old frame against the door." Just then, the first howl of the hounds pierced the air outside, a chilling reminder that their respite was fleeting. They had mere moments to prepare for the confrontation that awaited them. Together, they moved quickly, driven by the fierce will to survive against all odds. Eliza pressed her back against the cold, damp wall of the mill, her heart racing as the sounds of barking hounds drew closer. The wooden beams creaked ominously above, echoing the mounting tension. "We need to fortify the doors," she whispered, urgency lacing her voice. Nathaniel nodded, his eyes alight with adrenaline, as he and Samuel quickly began to gather anything they could find: old crates, a rusted plow, and pieces of broken furniture to shore up their meager defenses. Lila crouched by the window, peering through a cracked pane. "We have to work fast," she urged, her tone steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "The scent of our fear is drawing them in. They'll be here any moment." The group exchanged anxious glances, each of them acutely aware of the stakes. Thomas was relentless, and his dogs were trained to track their quarry with an unyielding ferocity. As they barricaded the main entrance, Samuel took a moment to assess their surroundings. "We might have a chance if we can lure them away from the back," he suggested, his mind racing through possibilities. "If we can create a noise near the creek, it might buy us some time." Eliza considered this, her instincts screaming that they needed to act quickly. "What if we split up?" she proposed. "Lila and I can set the distraction while you two hold the fort." Nathaniel shook his head, looking at her with concern. "It's too risky, Eliza. We've survived this long together. We can't start splitting up now." But Eliza's determination shone through. She had seen the way Thomas hunted, and she knew they had to take the offensive if they wanted any hope of survival. "We have to trust each other," she replied firmly. "I know the forest. I can lead Lila to the creek and make enough noise to draw the dogs away. You two can stay hidden here." After a tense moment, Nathaniel relented, though the worry etched on his face lingered. "All right, but we'll be right behind you if things go south. Just remember, stay low and move fast." With a final nod, Eliza and Lila slipped out of the mill, their hearts pounding in sync with their footsteps as they navigated the darkened forest. The air was thick with tension, and the sounds of the hounds grew more pronounced, punctuated by Thomas's distant shouts. They moved stealthily, weaving through the underbrush, and finally reached the edge of the creek. Eliza took a deep breath, scanning the area. "This is it," she murmured, glancing at Lila, who seemed to understand the plan without further explanation. They began to gather small stones and branches, preparing to create a loud ruckus. Just as they were ready to execute their plan, a rustling in the bushes caught Eliza's attention. Her heart dropped as she spotted a pair of glowing eyes peering back at her. A hound, its muzzle stained with mud and its coat matted, emerged from the shadows, sniffing the air. Panic surged through her veins, but before she could react, Lila grabbed her arm. "We have to move, now!" she hissed, darting towards the creek with Eliza close behind. The hound barked, its piercing howl echoing into the night, and within seconds, a chorus of barks erupted from deeper in the forest. "Go," Eliza urged, her voice barely above a whisper. They hurled stones into the water, creating a splash that would hopefully mask their escape. The sound reverberated through the trees, and they prayed it would be enough to divert the dogs. With the hound distracted, they bolted back into the cover of the trees, adrenaline carrying them forward. The cacophony of barking grew fainter as they slipped away, but Eliza knew it wouldn't last long. They had to hurry. Back at the mill, Nathaniel and Samuel listened in horror as the sounds of chaos crescendoed. "What's happening out there?" Samuel asked, his voice taut. They should have set the distraction by now. Just as he spoke, a pair of dogs burst through the door they had barricaded, snapping at the air. They had found their way inside. With no time to spare, Nathaniel and Samuel charged forward, ready to defend their comrades. "We fight," Nathaniel shouted, grabbing a broken beam to swing at the nearest hound. The battle for survival had begun, and they were determined not to let their friends down. The mill became a battleground, the clash of wood against teeth echoing through the night as the line between predator and prey blurred in the dim light. As the hounds clawed at the splintering wooden door, a cacophony of growls and frantic barks echoed in the dimly lit mill. Eliza and Lila exchanged a brief, resolute glance. The fire flickered behind them, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. Time was slipping away, much like the daylight seeping through the cracks in the walls. "We have to move," Eliza whispered, her voice barely audible over the din. "Lila, if you see a window—" Before she could finish, the door buckled under the weight of the hound's relentless assault, and Thomas's cold, mocking laughter rang out from outside. "You think you can hide from me? The forest speaks, and it tells me all your secrets." "That's our cue," Lila said, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Follow my lead. We can get to the roof. There's a chance we can escape from there." Nathaniel nodded grimly, tightening his grip on the makeshift weapon, a rusted pipe he had picked up from the floor. "We'll hold them off. Just be careful." Samuel, his eyes wide and trembling, hesitated. "What if something happens to you both?" "We can't—" "Stop!" Eliza cut in, her voice now steely. "We're all getting out of this, but we have to act now. Trust us, Samuel." With a deep breath, Lila led Eliza toward a narrow staircase that spiraled upward, the wood creaking ominously beneath their feet. The air grew cooler as they ascended, the faint smell of mildew contrasting with the metallic scent of fear. They reached a small trapdoor at the top, barely ajar, revealing the night sky speckled with stars. "On 3, Lila said, her heart racing. 1, 2, 3. They pushed the trapdoor open with a rush, and both girls tumbled onto the roof, the cool night air striking their faces like a welcome embrace. Below, they could hear Nathaniel's deep voice as he shouted commands to Samuel, preparing to face the hounds. "Look," Eliza pointed toward the trees beyond the mill. "There's a gap in the thicket. If we can create a diversion, they might follow us." "Right," Lila agreed, scanning the area. "There must be something we can use. A flare or—" A distant howling cut through the night, but it wasn't the hounds, it was another sound, one that sent chills down Eliza's spine. The unmistakable cry of a wolf echoed nearby, joining the fray of Thomas's hounds. An uneasy tension settled over them. "Do you think they'll help us?" Eliza asked, an idea forming in her mind. "If we can attract them, or lead them to Thomas," Lila added, excitement glimmering in her eyes, "we can use the forest against him." Eliza's heart raced as she rummaged through her pack. She pulled out a small flint striker, a remnant from their earlier travels. "If we can start a fire on the ridge, the smoke might confuse the hounds, and the wolves might come to investigate." "Let's do it," Lila urged, her adventurous spirit igniting. They quickly gathered stray bits of kindling, moving with urgency, each second feeling like an eternity as they could hear Nathaniel and Samuel's voices growing more desperate below. Just as they were about to strike the flint, the trap door burst open again, and Nathaniel's face appeared, his brow furrowed with worry. "What are you two doing?" he gasped, panting from exertion. "They're almost through. Trust us. We have a plan," Eliza urged, her eyes fierce with determination. "We need to create a distraction. We can't let Thomas catch us." With a reluctant nod, Nathaniel stepped back, ready to trust their instincts. Together, the three of them set the kindling ablaze, the flames crackling to life against the dry wood. As the fire grew, Lila shouted over the noise, "Samuel, get ready. When we give the signal, we need to draw them away." The hounds' frenzied barking intensified, and Eliza felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The fire roared, sending up thick, dark smoke that curled into the sky, and as if summoned by the chaos, the howls of the wolves grew closer. "Now!" Eliza cried, her heart hammering. They ignited their signal, sending sparks dancing into the night. The smoke billowed like a specter, twisting and curling, and just as the first wolf appeared at the tree line, they unleashed their voices in a primal scream, calling out into the darkness. The wolves answered, their haunting howls merging with the cacophony, and for a moment the forest erupted into a symphony of raw nature. A perfect distraction against the looming threat of Thomas and his hounds. "Run!" Nathaniel shouted from below, and with a final glance at the chaos unfolding, Eliza, Lila, and Nathaniel surged into action, racing along the rooftop, ready to leap into the abyss of the forest below, their hearts united in one singular purpose: survival. As the flames crackled and danced against the night sky, casting flickering shadows through the trees, Eliza and Lila felt a surge of adrenaline. The chaos below was palpable. The hounds, startled by the sudden eruption of fire, yelped and howled, their instinct to flee momentarily overriding their training. "Now's our chance," Eliza called out, her voice barely above the roar of the fire. She turned to Lila, who was already preparing to scale down the roof's slanted edge. "We need to regroup with Nathaniel and Samuel before the smoke draws more attention." With a nod, Lila followed Eliza as they carefully descended the roof. Their hearts raced, not just from the thrill of their narrow escape, but also from the nagging worry for their friends left behind. Eliza could only hope that Nathaniel and Samuel had managed to hold their ground amidst the chaos that had erupted within the walls of the mill. As they landed softly on the ground, the unmistakable sound of growling hounds resonated through the air. The two girls exchanged a tense glance. "We have to move now," Lila urged, pulling Eliza towards the cover of the trees. They sprinted into the dense underbrush, the smell of smoke still thick in their lungs. As they pressed deeper into the forest, the muffled sounds of snarling continued to echo from the direction of the mill. The fire had created a temporary respite, but they knew it wouldn't last long. Meanwhile, inside the mill, Nathaniel and Samuel fought with everything they had. The hounds were relentless, their eyes glinting with feral rage. Nathaniel swung a heavy wooden beam, knocking one hound aside, but there were too many. Samuel, trembling but determined, managed to shove a crate in front of an opening, buying them a few precious moments. "We can't hold them off forever," he yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. "We need to find a way out." "Just hold on," Nathaniel shouted back, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of Eliza and Lila. They were out there somewhere, and he was determined to protect them. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the mill. A section of the wall had collapsed, likely due to the fire's intensity. The hounds paused, momentarily confused by the new opening. Nathaniel seized the moment. "This way," he urged, pulling Samuel towards the newly exposed exit. Eliza and Lila, now hidden behind a thick bramble, heard the commotion and exchanged anxious glances. "They're still inside," Lila whispered urgently. "We have to go back for them." "No, we can't," Eliza hissed, her mind racing. "If we go back now, we'll be caught too. We have to trust them to follow us." Just as she finished speaking, they caught sight of Nathaniel and Samuel emerging from the smoke-filled mill, their faces grim. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived as they spotted the hounds regrouping in the distance, their eyes locked onto their next targets. "Run!" Nathaniel shouted as they sprinted towards the safety of the trees. The group darted into the thicket, the sounds of the hounds snapping at their heels growing louder. In a desperate bid to lose their pursuers, Eliza remembered the old tales of the forest. "There's a cave up ahead," she shouted, pointing towards the direction she had heard about in hushed whispers. "If we can get to it, we might be able to hide until it's safe." With no time to waste, they pressed on, the darkness of the forest closing in around them. The hounds were relentless, but the group pushed through, determined to reach the sanctuary of the cave. Just as they neared the entrance, an ominous growl echoed from behind, sending chills down their spines. "Quickly, inside," Lila urged, her voice a mix of fear and urgency. As they stumbled into the cave, shadows enveloped them. The sound of claws skidding against the cave's entrance sent a wave of panic coursing through their veins. They huddled together, breaths quickening, as the growls of the hounds echoed outside. "We have to block the entrance," Nathaniel said, looking around for anything they could use. "If they find us in here, it's over." Eliza took charge, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. "Lila, help me find something to barricade the entrance. Samuel, keep watch. Nathaniel, help me with this boulder." As they worked frantically, a thought lingered in Eliza's mind. Thomas would not stop until he had them. The fire might have bought them time, but it also ignited a more dangerous game. They needed a plan, a way to turn the tables on their pursuer before he closed in for the kill. And as the sound of scratching claws grew louder, she realized that their fight was far from over. As they huddled in the dimly lit cave, the sound of thundering paws echoed like war drums in the distance. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and the faint smoke from the fire they had ignited moments before. Eliza's heart raced as she pressed her back against the cool stone wall, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to keep quiet. If they pick up our scent, we're done for," Nathaniel whispered, his voice taut with anxiety. He glanced at Samuel, who was pacing nervously near the entrance. "Stay close and be ready to act if they come too close." Lila, ever the optimist, tried to lighten the mood. "How many hounds do you think Thomas has? Maybe we can take them out one by one." Eliza shot her a look, half amused and half annoyed. "This isn't a game, Lila. We can't afford to be reckless. We need a plan for when they find us." Suddenly, a low growl reverberated from outside the cave, the hairs on the back of Eliza's neck standing on end. The hounds had found their trail. The growling grew louder, interspersed with frantic barking that sent shivers down their spines. "Quick! We need to block the entrance better," Samuel urged, scrambling to gather rocks and fallen branches. Nathaniel joined him, both working feverishly as Eliza glanced at Lila, who seemed transfixed by the sounds outside. "Do you think they can smell us?" Lila whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Eliza nodded, her mind racing with memories of the stories she had heard about the hounds. "They are trained for this. They can track us by scent alone. We have to move soon, or we'll be trapped here." Just then, a howl pierced the night air, sharp and haunting. It was a call for the pack, and Eliza felt a chill creeping into her bones. "What if we could use it against them?" she blurted out suddenly, her mind sparking with a new idea. "If we can mimic the sound of wolves, we might throw them off our trail." Lila's eyes lit up. "You mean like howling? But how do we do that?" Samuel, still piling rocks, paused to consider. "We could use the echo in the cave. If we all howled together, our voices might blend with the forest." Nathaniel nodded slowly, his protective instincts faltering to curiosity. "It's risky, but it might just work. We need to sound convincing." Eliza took a deep breath, steeling herself. "On the count of 3, then. 1, 2. Just as they prepared to unleash their desperate howls, the cave entrance shuddered under the weight of a body slamming against it. The growling intensified, and Eliza's heart sank. "Now!" she shouted, and together they unleashed a chorus of howls that echoed through the cave and into the night. The sound reverberated off the walls, merging with the distant cries of true wolves in the forest. For a brief moment, it felt like their voices were part of something greater, a primal force pushing back against the encroaching threat. The response from outside was immediate. The hounds paused, their growls fading as they hesitated, confused. Eliza felt a surge of hope. Perhaps it was working. But the moment of relief was short-lived as the sound of claws scraping against stone returned with a vengeance. "We need to go now," Nathaniel urged, pushing the last of the stones against the entrance. "If we're going to get out of here, we have to take the risk." With no time to waste, Eliza grabbed Lila's hand, and they all squeezed through a narrow crevice at the back of the cave, an escape route they had nearly overlooked. The darkness engulfed them, and as they crawled through the tight space, the sounds of the hounds faded, replaced by the distant rustle of leaves and the crisp night air. Emerging on the other side, they found themselves at the edge of a steep hillside, the moonlight illuminating the treetops below. "Where do we go from here?" Samuel asked, panting, his face a mixture of determination and fear. Eliza scanned the landscape, her mind racing. We head downhill towards the river. If we can make it there, we'll have a chance to lose them in the water, she declared, her voice steady. Then let's move, Nathaniel said, rallying them together. With one last glance back at the cave, they plunged down the hillside, hearts pounding and adrenaline surging, ready to face whatever came next. Eliza led the way down the hillside, her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced back at the dark figure of the mill, now shrouded in the smoldering remains of their once safe haven. The acrid scent of smoke lingered in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of damp leaves that carpeted the forest floor. Lila hurried beside her, her usual cheerfulness dimmed but flickering like a candle in the wind. "Do you think we lost them?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might attract the hounds again. Eliza hesitated, her eyes scanning the shadows that danced between the trees. "I don't know. We need to keep moving." Behind them, Nathaniel and Samuel followed closely, their breaths ragged from exhaustion and fear. Nathaniel, normally the strong and unwavering protector, looked over his shoulder with a furrowed brow. "We can't stop until we reach the river. If we do, they'll catch up." Samuel, his face pale and trembling, nodded vigorously. I can't take this much longer," he stammered, a tremor in his voice betraying his nerves. "What if they find us again?" "Then we fight," Nathaniel replied, the steely resolve in his voice trying to bolster the group's spirits. Just then, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a chill down Eliza's spine. The hounds were still on their trail. "Run!" she shouted, sprinting forward with renewed urgency. The path narrowed as they pushed deeper into the forest, branches clawing at their clothes. But Eliza didn't look back. She focused on the sound of rushing water, the one thing they desperately needed to reach for safety. Lila stumbled slightly but caught herself, her arm brushing against Eliza's. "We can make it," she encouraged, her optimism flickering back to life. Suddenly, Nathaniel shouted, "There, up ahead." He pointed toward a break in the trees where the river glimmered under the fading sunlight. Hope surged within Eliza, but just as they neared the bank, a loud bark shattered the air. "Quick! Into the water!" Nathaniel urged, adrenaline fueling his words. Eliza hesitated for a moment, glancing at Samuel, who looked paralyzed with fear. "Samuel, we have to go," she called, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the river's edge. With a deep breath, they plunged into the cold water, the current tugging at their legs as they waded deeper. The icy shock momentarily stole the breath from Eliza's lungs, but she forced herself to move, urging Samuel to stay close. "Keep your head above water," she yelled over the roar of the river. As they swam, the sound of the hounds faded into the distance, but the thrill of escape was short-lived. Just as they reached a rocky outcrop on the opposite bank, Lila's voice rang out, laced with panic. "Eliza, look out!" Eliza turned to see a dark shape emerging from the tree line, a hound barreling toward the water, its powerful legs churning up mud and leaves. Without thinking, Eliza grabbed a nearby branch, its end jagged and sharp from the recent storms. "Get back!" she shouted, raising the branch like a spear. The hound skidded to a halt at the water's edge, snarling, its teeth bared in a menacing snarl. The rest of the group scrambled behind her, eyes wide with fear. "Don't move," Nathaniel commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. "If we stay still, it might back off." But Eliza could see the hound's determination, the hunger in its eyes. They couldn't afford to wait. We need a distraction, she thought, her mind racing. Something to draw it away. Samuel, she turned to him urgently, can you throw something, anything? With a shaky nod, Samuel scanned the river bank. He spotted a loose stone, and with all the strength he could muster, hurled it upstream. The splash drew the hound's attention, and for a moment it hesitated, ears perked, before lunging toward the noise. "Now!" Eliza shouted, and they surged through the water, hearts racing as they scrambled up the bank. They didn't stop to look back as they reached the safety of the dense underbrush on the other side. Breathing heavily, Eliza turned to her friends, relief washing over her as they huddled together. They had escaped the immediate threat, but as the sounds of the forest enveloped them, one thing was clear. They had only just begun to fight for survival. "We need to find shelter," Nathaniel said, scanning their surroundings. "And then we knot a plan." Eliza nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. There was no time to waste. They were still in danger, but together they would find a way out of this nightmare. As the chilling night air enveloped them, the sound of the river rushing beside them offered a brief respite from the relentless barking that echoed in the distance. Eliza, her heart racing and adrenaline surging through her veins, motioned for the others to huddle low in the thick underbrush. "We need to regroup and plan our next move," she whispered urgently, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the hounds. Lila, shivering slightly from both fear and the cool breeze, nodded. "If we can find a place to hide until morning, we might have a chance to slip away unnoticed." She tugged at her damp shirt, remembering the sudden chill of the water as they jumped in. "Look," Samuel said, his voice steadier than he felt. He pointed toward a cluster of large rocks further up the bank, partially concealed by ferns and brambles. "That might give us some cover. If we can make it there." Just as he finished speaking, the unmistakable sound of paws padding against the forest floor shattered their momentary calm. Nathaniel, his eyes wide with fear, grabbed Eliza's arm. "They're coming! We don't have time." "Go," Eliza urged, pushing Samuel and Lila toward the rocky outcrop. She stayed behind for a moment, her breath hitching as she caught sight of a pair of glowing eyes emerging from the darkness. The hound, its muscles tense and ready to spring, was closer than she'd anticipated. With a final glance over her shoulder, Eliza sprinted toward the rocks, her heart pounding like a drum. They scrambled behind the boulders just as the hound lunged, teeth snapping where they'd just stood. The group huddled together, their breaths ragged and shallow, listening as the hound sniffed the air, searching for their scent. "We can't stay here long," Nathaniel whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. "What if it doesn't leave?" Eliza's mind raced. "We need to find a way to throw it off our scent. If we can move upstream, we might find a spot where the water can wash away our trail." She looked around, her eyes landing on a fallen tree that leaned precariously over the river. "We can use that to cross to the other side. It might buy us some time." "Are you crazy?" Lila replied, her voice trembling. "That's risky." "It's riskier to stay here," Samuel countered, his determination igniting in the face of their dire situation. "We have to trust each other. If we stick together, we can make it." Eliza nodded, a spark of resolve igniting within her. They could hear the hound's low growl fading as it wandered further down the bank, searching for any trace of them. "Now's our chance. On my count. 1, 2, 3. They darted from their hiding place, sprinting towards the fallen tree. Eliza led the way, feeling the rough bark scrape against her hand as she clutched it tightly, her heart racing with each step. As they reached the edge of the trunk, she glanced back, only to see the hound reappear, its eyes locked onto them with chilling intensity. "Quick!" she shouted, urging the others to hurry. They balanced precariously along the tree, the current rushing below them. Just as they reached the halfway point, the hound leaped towards the shore, barking fiercely. The echoes of its growls reverberated through the forest, sending a wave of panic coursing through Eliza. "Go! Go! Go!" Nathaniel shouted, pushing forward even as the hound's claws scraped against the ground, closing the distance between them. With one final leap, they scrambled onto the bank of the opposite side, collapsing into a heap of tangled limbs and raw nerves. Lila gasped for breath, her eyes wide with terror. Did it follow us? Eliza turned, her heart still racing. The hound stood at the river's edge, barking furiously but hesitant to plunge into the water. They had bought themselves a moment, but it was only a matter of time before it would decide to take the plunge. "Let's go," Samuel urged, pulling them back onto their feet. "We don't have much time before it figures out how to cross." They dashed into the underbrush, heartbeats drumming in unison as they plunged deeper into the forest, the sounds of their pursuer fading behind them. But as they ran, uncertainty loomed over them like a dark cloud. Where would they go next? Would they find safety, or had they merely delayed the inevitable? Eliza pushed through the doubt, knowing that with every step they took, they were closer to finding their way out of this nightmare, or plunging deeper into it. The air was thick with tension as Eliza crouched behind the jagged rocks, her heart pounding in her chest. The distant howls of the hounds echoed through the trees, a chilling reminder that the danger was far from over. She glanced back at her friends, their eyes wide with fear, but filled with an unwavering resolve that mirrored her own. Nathaniel was scanning the perimeter, his brow furrowed in concentration, while Lila attempted to lend a semblance of comfort, whispering words of encouragement that barely masked her own dread. "Listen," Eliza said, her voice steady. "We need to keep moving. The river might have given us a moment's peace, but we can't stay here. Those dogs won't give up easily." Samuel, still catching his breath, nodded vigorously. "What's the plan?" he asked, gripping a sturdy branch he had picked up from the forest floor. Eliza considered their options, her mind racing. They could follow the river upstream, but that would lead them deeper into the forest, where the terrain could become treacherous. Alternatively, they could try to find a path that looped back toward the safety of the village, but that route would likely be exposed, making them easy prey for their pursuers. Just as she was about to suggest the river route, a rustling in the underbrush caught their attention. The group froze, hearts pounding in unison. From the thicket emerged a figure, a wild-eyed man, covered in dirt and leaves, his clothes torn and tattered. "Please, you have to help me," he gasped, his voice ragged with desperation. "They're coming for me, too. The hunters, they've taken everything." Eliza exchanged wary glances with Nathaniel. There was something unsettling about the man's wild demeanor, but they couldn't ignore the urgency in his plea. "What do you mean?" Nathaniel asked, stepping forward cautiously. "The hounds. They hunt in packs, but they're not just after me. They're after anyone who strays too far from the village. The hunters have been capturing people, using them as bait for others. I barely got away. The man's eyes darted nervously around them, as if he expected the hounds to spring from the shadows any moment. Eliza felt a chill run down her spine. This was worse than they had thought. "How far behind are they?" she demanded. "Not far. But you can't stay here, we need to move." Lila, ever the optimist, stepped forward. "Maybe he knows a safer route. If he's been living out here, he could guide us." The wild man hesitated, glancing back toward the sound of the approaching hounds, and then nodded. "There's a cave not far from here, hidden behind a thicket. It's a tight squeeze, but it'll keep us concealed for a while." Eliza weighed their options. Staying put was no longer an option, and the cave could provide a temporary sanctuary while they devised a new plan. "All right," she said decisively. "We'll follow you. But if this is a trap," the man held up his hands in surrender. "I swear it's not. Just follow me." With the hound's growls growing ever closer, the group quickly fell into step behind their new companion. They maneuvered through the trees, their hearts racing, and for a fleeting moment Eliza felt a glimmer of hope. If they could reach that cave, perhaps they could regroup and plan their next move. But as they approached the thicket, the sound of barking intensified, reverberating through the air like a drumbeat of impending doom. Eliza pushed herself to run faster, her instincts screaming that they needed to reach the cave before it was too late. Suddenly, the man veered off the path, darting into a dense cluster of bushes. "This way," he called out urgently. The group followed suit, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they squeezed through the foliage. Just as they burst into the clearing, the sound of the hounds grew deafening, and Eliza realized with a sinking feeling that they weren't the only ones being hunted. As she turned to look back, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure emerging from the trees, followed by a pack of snarling hounds. "Run!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "Get to the cave, now!" They sprinted, the wild man leading them toward an opening in the rock face. As they dove inside, the world outside faded into a blur of noise and chaos. The cave was dark and damp, the air thick with the scent of earth and moss, but it provided a momentary refuge from the relentless pursuit. Panting heavily, Eliza pressed against the cave wall, her heart racing. They could hear the hounds circling outside, their growls echoing within the cave. "What now?" Samuel whispered, his voice trembling. Eliza turned to the wild man, determination etched across her features. "You said this cave is safe. How do we defend ourselves? How do we outsmart them?" His eyes flickered with a mix of fear and defiance. "We wait," he replied, "and when they least expect it, we make our move." As the growls of the hounds grew louder, Eliza felt a surge of resolve. Whatever horrors lay ahead, they would face them together. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for each other. And as they huddled in the darkness, a plan began to form, one that would test their ingenuity and their bond. Inside the cave, darkness enveloped them, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. The wild-eyed man, whose name they learned was Gideon, crouched near the entrance, peering through the narrow opening at the forest beyond. His eyes shimmered with a mix of fear and determination. "We've bought ourselves a moment," he whispered, his voice low and urgent, "but it won't last long. The hounds won't give up easily." Eliza nodded, her heart racing. "We need a plan. If they find us here, we'll be trapped." Lila shivered, clutching Samuel's arm. What if they have hunters with them? We might be walking right into a trap. Gideon turned to face them, the shadows painting deep lines across his weathered face. The hunters are clever, but they underestimate the forest. If we work together, we can use it to our advantage. He paused, scanning their faces. But first, we need to know what we're up against. Eliza felt a surge of resolve. What do you suggest? Gideon rummaged through his tattered satchel, pulling out a small, crumpled map. He spread it on the cave floor, revealing a network of twisting trails and landmarks. These paths are known to the hunters, but they often overlook the hidden routes, he explained, tracing a finger along a narrow line that snaked deeper into the woods. If we head south, we can reach the old mill. It's abandoned, and there's a way to barricade ourselves inside. South it is, Samuel agreed, but we have to be quick. The hounds are already on our scent. As they strategized, a sudden, bone-chilling howl echoed through the trees outside. The sound sent a tremor of fear rippling through the group. The hounds were closing in, and with them, the certainty of their time running out. "Let's move," Nathaniel urged, his voice steady even as his eyes betrayed his anxiety. We can't stay here any longer." Gideon led the way, his footsteps silent on the forest floor, while the others followed closely, hearts pounding in rhythm with their hurried breaths. They weaved through the trees, the underbrush snapping underfoot, a stark reminder of their precarious situation. Each rustle seemed amplified, every shadow a potential threat. As they approached the edge of the cave's mouth, Eliza glanced back, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. "We need to find a way to distract the hounds," she said suddenly. "If we can lure them away, we might have a chance to reach the mill." "What do you have in mind?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eliza hesitated, then an idea struck her. "The wildflowers near the creek. They have a pungent scent. If we gather enough, we can create a diversion. Hounds can be drawn by their noses." "Brilliant." Gideon nodded appreciatively. "But it means splitting up. It's risky, but it might just buy us enough time." Before anyone could object, Eliza pointed toward a dense thicket not far from the cave. "Lila and Samuel, you two go with Gideon. Gather the flowers while Nathaniel and I scout ahead. We'll keep an eye on the path." The plan was hastily agreed upon, adrenaline fueling their movements. As they split into two groups, the urgency of their task settled over them like a shroud. The forest, once a place of serene beauty, now loomed ominously, hiding threats in its depths. As Nathaniel and Eliza crept forward, every sound became amplified, the rustle of leaves, the distant snapping of twigs, and the ever closer growls of the hounds. Time seemed to stretch, each second a reminder of the danger lurking just beyond their line of sight. "Do you think they'll make it back in time?" Eliza asked, her voice strained with worry. Nathaniel glanced at her, determination hardening his features. "They will. We have to believe that." But the forest had its own plans, just as silence fell around them. The unmistakable sound of the hounds echoed once more. This time, it was accompanied by the chilling laughter of the hunters, their voices a taunting reminder of the peril that awaited just outside the safety of their hiding place. "Move!" Nathaniel shouted, urgency driving him forward as they pressed deeper into the woods, hoping against hope that their friends would return before it was too late. Eliza and Nathaniel crept through the dense underbrush, the weight of every sound pressing against their ears like a thick fog. The rustle of leaves and the distant howls of the hounds twisted their stomachs into knots. They moved cautiously, hearts pounding in sync with the rhythm of their hurried footsteps. Eliza glanced at Nathaniel, who was scanning their surroundings with a furrowed brow. "We need to find a vantage point," she whispered, urgency lacing her voice. "If we can see where the hunters are, we can plan our next move." Just ahead, a gnarled oak tree with sprawling branches loomed, its twisted trunk providing a suitable base for their lookout. They climbed nimbly, the rough bark scratching their palms as they ascended into the canopy. From the higher branches, they could see a clearing where the hunters congregated, their torches flickering like fireflies in the encroaching dusk. The hounds were tethered nearby, their growls a chilling reminder of the peril that loomed over them. "This way," Nathaniel pointed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I see a path leading deeper into the woods, away from them." As they surveyed the scene, a sharp bark echoed through the air, sending a shiver down Eliza's spine. "They're getting restless. We have to hurry back to the others." Meanwhile, Lila and Samuel knelt in a thicket, their hands deftly plucking vibrant wildflowers from the ground. Lila's infectious smile seemed to spark a flicker of hope in Samuel, who had been trembling with anxiety since they entered the cave. "Look," she said, holding up a handful of bright yellow petals. "These are perfect. If we weave these into a garland, the hounds might be distracted long enough for us to slip away." Samuel nodded, his eyes wide with apprehension. "But what if they don't like the flowers? What if they just keep sniffing for our scent?" "We have to trust the plan," Lila assured him, her voice steady. "Gideon believes it will work, and so do I." As they gathered more flowers, Gideon emerged from the shadows, his eyes sharp and alert. "The hunters are moving closer," he warned, urgency in his tone. "We need to finalize our plan and get moving before the night fully descends. Eliza and Nathaniel are scouting, but we must be ready to act." Back in the trees, Eliza and Nathaniel climbed down swiftly, slipping into the underbrush just as a shadow passed overhead. They rushed back to their companions, catching their breath as they rejoined Lila and Samuel. "We saw the hunters," Eliza said, her voice low. "They're gathering at the clearing. We need to create the distraction now, before they split off and start searching for us in the woods." Gideon nodded and directed the group to quickly weave the flowers into garlands. They worked in silence, each member's mind racing with the weight of the task ahead. As the last of the flowers were tied, a low rumble of thunder echoed from the distance, adding to the tension in the air. "Let's hope we can make it before the storm hits," Nathaniel murmured, glancing up at the darkening sky. With their makeshift garlands ready, they huddled close, forming a plan. "We'll split into 2 teams," Eliza said, her voice strong and confident. "Lila and Samuel will head to the north end of the clearing, and Nathaniel and I will take the south. We'll throw the garlands as far as we can to lead the hounds away from our path." Just as they were about to set their plan in motion, a loud cacophony erupted from the clearing. The hounds began to bark furiously, and the hunters called out to one another, their voices laced with confusion. "It's now or never," Eliza urged, adrenaline surging through her veins. They dispersed into the shadows, hearts racing, as they prepared to unleash their distraction and make their escape into the depths of the forest, toward an uncertain future where danger lurked at every turn, but hope still glimmered like the last remnants of daylight. As the sun dipped beneath the canopy, casting elongated shadows that danced eerily across the forest floor, the air thickened with anticipation. Eliza adjusted the garlands of wildflowers she had carefully woven, vibrant colors contrasting starkly against the muted browns and greens of their surroundings. The time for action was drawing near, and she could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, heightening her senses. "Lila, how are you doing?" Eliza asked, noticing the slight tremor in her friend's hands as she arranged the flowers. Lila flashed a quick, reassuring smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm ready," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's make this count." Gideon stepped forward, a stoic presence amidst the mounting chaos. "Remember, we need to scatter the flowers in a wide arc. The hounds will follow the scent. If we can lead them far enough away from the mill, we might have a chance." His voice was calm, yet the urgency in his eyes betrayed the weight of their mission. Samuel, still fidgeting with the hem of his shirt, nodded fervently. "And once they're gone, we'll head straight for the mill, right? No looking back." "Exactly," Nathaniel interjected, his gaze fixed on the distant sound of barking, which seemed to grow louder with every heartbeat. "Stick together and keep quiet. If we make too much noise, we'll alert the hunters." With a nod of agreement, the group split again. Eliza, Lila, and Gideon would venture deeper into the underbrush, while Nathaniel and Samuel would remain behind to guard their makeshift hideout. As they made their way through the thick foliage, the scent of damp earth and the rustle of leaves enveloped them, amplifying the tension in the air. Suddenly, a chilling howl pierced the evening air, sending shivers down Eliza's spine. "They're closer than I thought," she whispered, urgency creeping into her tone. "We need to move faster." As they reached a clearing, the sight that met their eyes made Eliza's heart race. A pack of hounds, their eyes glinting in the dim light, were sniffing the air, clearly agitated. The hunters were just beyond them, shouting commands, their figures flickering like shadows in the fading light. "Now!" Gideon commanded, and without hesitation, Lila threw the garlands of flowers into the air, a cascade of colors that danced on the wind. The hounds' ears perked up, their instincts kicking in as they caught the scent. With a collective bark, they abandoned their original pursuit and lunged toward the vibrant distraction. "Let's go," Eliza urged, leading the charge toward the mill. As they ran, she felt the pounding of her heart in her ears, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding of the hound's paws behind them. But just as they approached the mill, Nathaniel and Samuel rejoined them, breathless and wide-eyed. "What happened?" Eliza asked, glancing over her shoulder. "They caught sight of us," Nathaniel panted, "but we managed to keep them at bay for a moment. We heard some of the hunters splitting off. They're looking for a shortcut through the trees." Panic surged through Eliza as she quickly assessed their options. "We can't let them catch up. There's an old trap door in the mill's cellar. It might lead us to the underground stream, a safer escape route." With no time to waste, the group rushed towards the dilapidated mill, its wooden beams creaking ominously. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp wood and rust, a stark reminder of the mill's forgotten past. As they reached the entrance, the sound of barking hounds echoed through the trees, closer than before. "Quickly," Gideon urged, pushing open the door, which groaned in protest. We have to find that trap door." They dashed inside, and the dim light revealed dust-covered machinery and cobwebs that hung like veils. Lila's heart raced as she scanned the room. "There!" she shouted, pointing to a corner where a loose floorboard lay slightly ajar. As they pried it open, the musty scent of earth wafted up, mingling with their fear and desperation. "Ladies first," Nathaniel said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. Lila nodded, taking a deep breath before lowering herself into the darkness below. One by one, they followed, each feeling the weight of the world pressing down on them as they descended into the unknown, the sounds of the hunters and hounds fading into echoes of their past. But as they reached the bottom, the faint glimmer of water caught Eliza's eye, a glimmer of hope in the enveloping darkness. Eliza crouched low behind a gnarled root, her heart racing as she watched the last of the sun dip below the horizon. The shadows lengthened, stretching across the clearing like a dark omen, and the distant sound of barking echoed through the trees, each bark a harsh reminder that time was not on their side. She exchanged a quick glance with Nathaniel, who was still scanning their surroundings, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Are you ready?" Eliza whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Nathaniel nodded, the determination in his eyes igniting a flicker of hope within Eliza. "Lila and Samuel should be back any moment with the garlands. We need to make sure we have a clear path before we move." In the dim light, Lila emerged, her arms overflowing with colorful wildflowers, their vibrant hues contrasting starkly against the darkening forest. Samuel trailed behind her, his face pale but resolute as he clutched a fragile bouquet. "We did it!" Lila exclaimed, her eyes sparkling despite the tension. "These will definitely draw the hounds away. I just hope they're as hungry for flowers as I think they are." Eliza couldn't help but smile at Lila's infectious optimism. "Great job, both of you. Now, let's split into teams as planned. Gideon, you and I will position ourselves at the edge of the clearing, while Nathaniel, you take Lila and Samuel to the other side." Gideon nodded, his calm demeanor helping to steady the group. "Keep your voices low and stay close to the trees. If we stick to the shadows, we might just outsmart them." As the teams took their positions, the tension in the air thickened, each member acutely aware of the stakes at hand. Eliza felt a twinge of anxiety as she glanced over her shoulder at the mill, the trap door now a haunting reminder of their potential path to safety, if they could just create enough of a diversion. "On 3, Nathaniel whispered, glancing at Lila and Samuel, who were both visibly trembling. 1, 2, 3. With a swift motion, they hurled the garlands of flowers into the distance. The cascade of color tumbled through the air, a vibrant splash against the muted browns and greens of the forest floor. For a moment, silence hung in the air, as if the forest itself held its breath in anticipation. Then, the hounds caught a whiff of the floral scent, their noses twitching as they turned away from the hunters, bounding toward the distraction. Eliza couldn't help but feel a flicker of triumph. "Now!" she urged, beckoning Gideon to follow her across the clearing, their hearts pounding in sync with the thundering paws of the hounds. They sprinted, the underbrush crunching beneath their feet, urgency propelling them forward. But just as they reached the edge of the mill, a shout rang out, piercing through the forest like a knife. "They're over here!" The hunters had spotted them, their lanterns flickering to life, casting long shadows that danced eerily around them. "Quick!" "To the trap door," Eliza yelled, adrenaline kicking in as she threw herself open and descended into the darkness below. Gideon was right behind her, followed closely by Nathaniel, Lila, and Samuel. The underground stream rushed past them, the cold air wrapping around their bodies like a shroud. Eliza's heart thundered in her chest as she swam against the current, pulling Samuel along, who struggled with panic. "Just keep your head above water," she urged, her voice firm yet comforting. As they emerged from the water, gasping for air, the sound of barking grew fainter above them, the hunters' voices muffled by the weight of the earth surrounding them. We made it," Lila panted, her eyes wide with relief, though the fear still clung to her like the dampness of the stream. "Not yet," Nathaniel replied, his voice steady. "We need to find a way to get out of here before they realize where we've gone." Gideon glanced around, the faint light of their lantern flickering against the stone walls. "If we follow the stream, it should take us away from the mill. We'll need to be cautious. There may be more dangers ahead." With a renewed sense of purpose, the group pressed forward, the darkness enveloping them but also offering a sense of protection. Each step they took echoed a silent promise of survival, camaraderie, and the hope that soon they would emerge into the safety of the night, far away from the hunters who pursued them.